April 30th, Thursday. We're talking about Rome's influence in today's world. Our learning target is I can describe ways in which ancient Rome influences the world today. You are currently watching the video lesson. Kudos to you. We're going to read pages 424 through 429 in the chapter we started yesterday. So if you want to pause and find that in Schoology, you can do that now. And then we're going to complete questions 7 through 12 of the Legacy of Rome quiz. Before we get started, let's activate a little bit of schema. So if we take a look at the United States quarter, everybody's seen a quarter before. On the back of the quarter, underneath where it says the United States of America, it has a Latin or Roman saying. The translation, what do you think the translation of the motto E pluribus unum means? So this means one from many or out of many, talking about how we fought against the British for our freedom, against taxation, and came out as one country. So this is just one way that Rome has influenced our modern society. They've also influenced through art, architecture, engineering, language, philosophy, law, and justice. So let's think back. Do you remember the Forum that we talked about, that complex group of government buildings and meeting halls, religious, business, and government life, or even the Circus Maximus, where they held the gladiator fights? Well, if we think about those two Roman architecture types, and then we look at our own modern day, for instance, the Abraham Lincoln Memorial, or the Rotunda in the Capitol building. And this is actually, don't know where that is actually. I probably should have done my research. We could also talk about Circus Maximus. Look at the stadium of Ohio State University, or the Ohio State University, I guess I should say. Looks just like that of the Circus Maximus, or LSU. So these are just some ways that the Romans influence our modern day. So if we're looking at today's reading, we are on page 424 of chapter 38. Is that correct? Yes. And we are starting with the section called Architecture and Engineering. If I were you right now, I would pause this video. I would go in and open up my Schoology assignment. So as I heard the answers, I could answer the questions. Architecture and engineering. The Romans' greatest contributions to science and technology came in the fields of architecture and engineering. Rome builders learned from the Greeks, Etruscans, and others before adding their own genius to take construction in new directions. Architecture. The Romans learned how to use the arch, the vault, and the dome. A vault is an arch used to support a roof. A dome is a series of vaults that form a high, rounded roof. The Romans were first to make widespread use of concrete, which they made by mixing broken stone with sand, cement, and water, and then allowing the mixture to harden. With the use of concrete, they were able to construct much bigger arches than anyone had previously attempted. Roman baths and other public buildings often had great arched vaults. The Pantheon, a magnificent temple, now a church that still stands in Rome, is famous for its huge dome. The Romans also invented a new kind of building, a stadium. This was a large open-air structure. The Romans used concrete to build tunnels into the famous Colosseum in Rome. The tunnels helped spectators to easily reach their seats, a feature that modern stadiums still use. The grand style of the Roman buildings has inspired many architects throughout the centuries. One Roman innovation that was widely copied is the Triumphal Arch, a huge monument built to celebrate great victories or achievements. One modern example is the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, France, which celebrates the victories of the French Emperor Napoleon in the early 1800s. Today is the National War Memorial of France. You can see a Roman influence in the design of many modern churches, banks, and government buildings. A fine example is the Capitol building, the home of the U.S. Congress in Washington, D.C., which includes arches, columns, and a dome. Engineering. The Romans revolutionized engineering as well as architecture. They were the greatest builders of roads, bridges, and aqueducts in the ancient world. About 50,000 miles of roads connected Rome with the frontiers of the empire. The Romans built their roads with layers of stone, sand, and gravel. Their technique set the standard of road construction for 2,000 years. In some parts of Europe, vehicles still drive on freeways built over old Roman roads. The Romans also set a new standard for developing aqueducts. Although they did not invent the aqueduct, the Romans once again learned the technique and improved upon it. They created a system of aqueducts for Rome. The aqueducts brought water from about 60 miles away to the home of the wealthiest citizens, as well as the city's public baths and foundations. The Romans built aqueducts in other parts of the empire as well. The water system in Segovia, Spain, still uses part of the ancient Roman aqueduct. Remains of Roman aqueducts can also be seen in Europe, North Africa, and Asia Minor. Section 4, language. One legacy of Rome that affects modern society every day is the Roman language, Latin. English speakers use the Latin alphabet, although Roman Latin used 23 letters and English uses 26. Many English words come from Latin. Additionally, Latin proverbs are still in use. For example, look at the reverse side of a U.S. dime. You will see the words e pluribus unum, which translates from Latin to out of many. This is the official motto of the United States. The motto reminds Americans of how the colonies joined together to form the United States. Several modern European languages developed from Latin, including Italian, Spanish, French. English is a Germanic language, but it was strongly influenced by the French-speaking Normans, who conquered England in 1066 CE. English has borrowed heavily from Latin, both directly and by way of French. The influence of Latin can be seen in many words English speakers use today. For example, the modern calendar comes from the one adopted by Julius Caesar. The names of several months are derived from Latin. August honors Caesar Augustus. September comes from the Latin word meaning the seventh month. The Roman year started in March. Many English words began with Latin prefixes. A prefix is a set of letters at the beginning of the word that carries its own meaning. Attaching a prefix to a root word creates a new word with a new meaning. In fact, the word prefix is formed this way because it comes from pre, in front of, and fix, to fasten or to attach. The table called the Roman Legacy in Modern Words and Numerals illustrates other examples as well as other English words that come from Latin root words. For instance, manual developed from manus, and Latin word for hand. Finally, Roman numerals are often still used in the modern world. The Romans used a system of letters to write numbers. Look at the bottom section of the table. You may see many Roman numerals such as these on clocks, sundials, and the first pages of books like this one. You might also find Roman numerals on buildings and in some movie credits to indicate the year in which they were made. Side note, the Super Bowl always uses Roman numerals to show which number Super Bowl we're at. The Romans combined the 7 letters shown in the table to express large numbers. Putting letters after another adds to the value of additional letters. For example, VIII means 5 plus 3 equals 8, and XX means 10 plus 10 equals 20. Putting a letter before a letter with a greater value subtracts its value. For example, IV means 5 minus 1 equals 4, and IX means 10 minus 1 equals 9. If you are interested in the Latin prefixes, roots, and Roman numerals, feel free to pause the video and look through them on your own time. Section 5, Philosophy and Law. Like art and architecture, Roman philosophy and law were greatly influenced by the Greeks. However, the Romans made contributions of their own they passed on to future generations. Philosophy. Many Romans followed a philosophy known as Stoicism. First developed by the ancient Greeks, the system of thinking was adopted by the ancient Romans and followed until about 200 CE. Stoics believed that a divine intelligence ruled all nature and that a person's soul was a spark of the divine intelligence. These individuals believed that the right way to live was in one way that agrees with nature and its laws. To the Stoics, the key to life was to maintain a good character, which meant having virtues such as self-control and courage. Stoics disagreed with those who argued that happiness meant only avoiding pain and only experiencing pleasure. They highly prized duty and the welfare of the community over their personal comfort. Additionally, they believed that true happiness was the peace of mind that came from living up to the Stoic ideals. The most famous Roman Stoic was the Emperor Marcus Aurelius. He documented his private thoughts in a book he called To Himself. Later, it was retitled Meditations. In his writings, Aurelius consistently reminded himself of Stoic ideas. He said not to worry if you encounter ungratefulness, insults, disloyalty, or selfishness, because if you think and act rightly, none of these things can hurt you. Stoics were famous for bearing pain and suffering bravely and quietly. To this day, someone who behaves in this way is referred to as a Stoic. Law and justice. The Stoics' beliefs about justice and nature fit very well with Roman ideas about law. Roman law covered marriages, inheritances, contracts, and countless other aspects of daily life. Modern law codes in European countries such as France and Italy are partially based on Roman laws. Another legacy of the Romans was their concept of justice. The Romans believed that nature provides a universal law of justice. Under the natural law, they believed every person has natural rights. Romans aimed to spread the ideas by applying it to all citizens of the empire. Judges in Roman courts attempted to make just or fair decisions that respected individual rights. Like most people, the Romans did not always live up to their ideals, as their courts did not treat the poor or slaves equally with the rich. Emperors often made bad laws. Regardless, the Roman ideas of justice and natural law still survive. The U.S. Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution were influenced by Roman ideas about law and government. Like judges in Roman courts, modern day judges make decisions based on those ideas, as well as the written law. Similarly, many people today believe that all humans have basic rights that no written law can take away. Make sure you go in, complete that Schoology assignment. As always, any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to contact me. I would like to remind you that pickup and drop off of items for sixth grade is going to be May 15th from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. You can turn in library books, textbooks, athletic uniforms, any equipment, laptops, chargers, etc., and they should all be returned at these times. I'm going to do my best to see if I can get there and help volunteer, make things go as smoothly as possible and see some of your lovely faces. It really all just depends on how things go in my life, and I would try and keep you updated. Hope to talk to you soon. Bye.